You're tuned in and locked on. Gay News Radio with Brandon Carmody. Only on the GNR Radio Network.
You're listening to Gay News Radio. This is Brandon Carmody. My guest this morning is Adam Sank, described as America's favorite gay. Welcome to Gay News Radio.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's lovely to be speaking with you.
Absolutely. Now, in all due respect to the Orlando situation, we've been doing our interviews a little bit differently this week. I'm sure you can understand.
Okay.
So I wanted to start there, Adam, and ask you, what space are you in today? What are you feeling about Orlando, the community, and everything going on? Where are you at today yourself?
Well, I'm sorry. There's a gigantic buzzsaw happening right outside my apartment, and so I'm trying to find a quiet place in this apartment to speak about something so important. Obviously, I was shattered when I first heard the news, as I think everyone was. Certainly anyone with any kind of heart felt just so awful about this massacre. In the days that have followed, it's been a mixed bag. I attended the vigil in front of Stonewall here in New York City, and that was really powerful. There were thousands and thousands of people there, and in some ways it was very much a political rally about gun control and about finally enacting sensible gun laws to stop, or at least try to stop, these kind of events from happening in the future. And then in other ways, it was just kind of a mass outpouring of sorrow. And when they read the names of all of the victims, I was crying. Everyone around me was crying. I didn't know any of these people personally, but I know that any one of them could have been my best friend or myself. And that really hurt. So in a way, it's been, strangely comforting to be able to share my grief with everyone else. And I see a lot of really beautiful things coming out of this now, including, I think for the first time, real momentum about changing the nation's gun laws. And I don't think it will happen before this presidential cycle is over, but I think this could finally be the thing that really pushes the needle and gets our leaders to just do what they need to do to stop this from happening. And also, I think it in kind of a sick and tragic way, it humanizes the LGBT community for parts of the country and parts of the world that don't necessarily see us as human.
Right, and that's those are very well points. I'm so glad to hear you went to the vigil at Stonewall. I was in Portland, Oregon's vigil at the Q Center last night. Same reactions. You have so many people that are there to legitimately pay their respects to our honored dead. Now, you were talking about gun laws. I just want to ask you, Adam, and break it down to basic hate. In the now year since this historic Supreme Court victory enacting same-sex marriage, when we've seen this really visceral type of hate on the political campaign trail, on the Republican side, these anti-transgender bathroom bills, does a lot of this just break down to basic hate and how much further as a community we have more work to do to try and bring about more understanding in this country? Or is there always going to be hate when we kind of look at it north and south and the old attitudes, if you know what I mean?
I think some of it's hate. I think some of it's ignorance, and I think a lot of it's just politics. These issues always seem to become loudest when there's an election year, and especially a presidential election year. And, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I'm a proud liberal Democrat. I have been my whole life. We have one of our two major political parties, the Republican Party, that campaigns and wins elections almost entirely on the basis of fear. They terrify their constituents, and they, every 4 years we hear, that the Democrats, the liberals, are going to take away their guns. They're going to go into your bathrooms and rape your women. They're going to tear down the fabric of society. They're going to, it's all of these things it's these fear-based tactics that unfortunately win them races in parts of the country. Now, I live in New York. It doesn't work here, thank God. For a Republican to win anywhere in the state of New York, he or she has to be somewhat reasonable and have actual ideas about how to legislate. It can't just be like, oh, the liberals are boogeymen and they're going to get you and your kids. But I think as long as that keeps happening, you're going to see LGBT people as well as Muslims and African Americans and other minorities used as pawns in this political process. It's been happening as long as I can remember, and I think it'll keep happening as long as it keeps winning them races. Now, what's interesting is you don't really hear so much about same-sex marriage in this presidential election cycle. Some of the Republican candidates talked about it early in the primary season, but the one who won, Donald Trump, who I find just the most loathsome human being on the planet, I got to give it to him. He hasn't really made an issue out of same-sex marriage. He doesn't care, and he really doesn't even care about the trans bathroom issue. So I think what you're seeing for the first time is, those issues no longer play with enough voters, and that is a kind of progress, and I think 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, I don't think those issues will work at all, and I think they're going to have to find some other way to win elections. I don't think they can just keep beating us up because it's not working anymore.
I have a question for you about Trump. So, since the early days of the Trump campaign trail, we've had listeners slip us an article or two, even an MSNBC article. It said, hey, Brandon, did you know that Donald Trump is pro-LGBT and pro-gay marriage? And at the time, he was just spewing out so much hateful rhetoric that the media was just going crazy, and I couldn't track anything. Latinos, John McCain, I like people that weren't captured, and I just couldn't follow his vitriol. And so I was unclear where he stood. But when it specifically came to the Supreme Court case, I remember a point where he said that was decided and let's move on. And I thought, thank God, he's going to leave that one alone. But then in the subsequent time since, he clearly stated that he would enact a Supreme Court judge that would work to undo same-sex marriage. Not that he had my vote up to that point, but he would have definitely lost all LGBT vote if they heard that quote. Now, in the recent days since Orlando, he's tried to come out and show support for the LGBT community. So let me ask you this, Adam. Is anyone buying it? Anyone at all?
Well, I'm certainly not. I mean, listen, I don't care if Donald Trump is the most pro-gay candidate that we've ever seen. I wouldn't vote for him solely on the basis of his racism, his xenophobia, and the fact that he's completely unqualified for the highest office in the land. I wouldn't want him to be the president of my local PTA. If he ran for city council, I would be like, hell no. He has absolutely no ideas. He has no policy ideas. His campaign is based entirely on, I hate Mexicans, I hate Muslims.
That's right.
That's basically it. Build a wall. That's the only idea he has. So I'm not a single issue voter. Do I think he's pro-gay? No, I don't. I don't think he's particularly anti-gay either. He was born and raised in New York City. It's pretty hard to be vehemently anti-gay and live here. There's just too many of us. And he doesn't come from a religious background, which is probably good. People who tend not to come from strict religious backgrounds tend to be more tolerant when it comes to sexual minorities. But again, I don't care. He's already poisoned the well for me with his complete ineptitude as well as all of the offensive statements that he has made. When any presidential candidate says, we are going to stop people from coming to this country on the basis of their religion, they have lost my vote now and forever.
let me ask you about on the Democratic side. Now, of course, at this point, Bernie Sanders hasn't officially dropped out, but the news is dropping some very heavy hints that he's going to be supporting our presumptive nominee. So all the polls coming out right now are showing Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton at record unfavorables, neck and neck at various times, unilaterally hated by various members of the community. Now, that's just a number on a page, but let me tell you this. When I expressed my open support for Hillary Clinton at work the other night, I got my ass handed to me by about 10 coworkers. So I've seen it. I've seen it in person. She's not that much more loved than Donald Trump. Do you have any insight as far as to why a lot of people are not getting on board with her when the terrifying alternative is Donald Trump? I mean, are people basically feeling like they're going to have two bad choices this year?
Listen, I think Hillary brings a lot of baggage with her. She's not a perfect candidate by any means. She's certainly not as strong a candidate as Barack Obama was 8 years ago. But she's a lot stronger a candidate than Barack Obama was 4 years ago. If you remember, Obama was hated by a good segment of the country. I say simply because he's black, but, you know, they'll give you a million stupid reasons why he's a failure and he's ruined our country and so forth. He still beat Mitt Romney, and Mitt Romney was a moderate. Mitt Romney was a decent, respectable, experienced politician who had governed Massachusetts pretty well and had, you know, done a lot of things in his life. If Romney couldn't beat Obama 4 years ago, I don't think Trump's going to be able to beat Hillary. Now, as far as polls, it's still super early in this race. Sanders hasn't conceded yet. His supporters have not gotten over the fact that he lost. We haven't had either of the two conventions. You know, talk to me in July or August. I think things are going to look very different. What I see is the entire Republican establishment running away from Trump and saying we cannot be identified with this person because he's so toxic and so dangerous and such a complete lunatic. And when you have them running away from him, that he doesn't have a chance of winning. Right, because
absolutely,
he can't go.
And I can't say that we've ever seen that before. I mean, Time Magazine today had Paul Ryan telling his former Republican constituents, "Vote with your conscience." So he basically wasn't saying, "Don't vote for Trump." It's like, vote with your conscience. So that's basically code for don't vote for the guy.
That's right. Hillary's going to go around the country.
He single-handedly knocked everybody else out. There's nobody else in the race on that side.
Right. Hillary's going to go around the country. And everywhere she speaks, she's going to be joined by Democratic senators, Democratic governors, members of Congress. She's going to have the entire party behind her cheering for her. Trump is going to be lucky if he can get a few state reps to come up and show their face next to him. In all but the most extreme places, like I'm sure in Alabama the governor will be happy to stand with him, but Alabama's not going to vote Democratic no matter what. So it doesn't matter. If he gets the support in those kinds of states. He needs support in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio and Florida, and he's not going to get them. He's not going to get it from those Republican leaders. So I don't say that this is going to be easy. Hillary is not well liked. Her unfavorables are also very high, and I have my issues with Hillary too. But the choice between the two of them, I mean, it's like choosing between a headache and cancer. You know, which would you rather suffer?
Yeah.
And the thing about Hillary also is, like, my issues with her are more like ethical. I think she and her husband are both. Can I swear?
Oh, we can bleep it. Yeah, go ahead.
I think she and her husband are both shady as fuck in terms of their personal dealings, and I always have felt that way. But they're also like fantastic at governing. They're really good at governing. They get shit done. And she was a really good senator, and she was a good Secretary of State. And no one had an issue with her when she was doing those things. It was only when she ran for president against Bernie Sanders that suddenly she became this villain, this Cruella de Vil. So I think people are going to come around. I think they're going to see what a stark choice that we have. And, I mean, listen, the thought of Donald Trump becoming president, even as a comedian, is terrifying to me. I don't think it's something we would recover from as a country. I think it would be the end of the United States as we know it.
Well, here's some interesting insight. His supporters are so violent online in terms of their hate and their vitriol